Should Chinese cars be banned in Australia? I can't believe I even have to make a video on this topic because frankly, I think it's a really sad topic. And that is frankly selling loads of advertising space in newspapers and getting heaps of clicks on websites. But it is also leading to what I think are really harmful ways of thinking, which is we should just blanket ban cheap Chinese cars that are currently flooding the Australian market. Now, before I go any further, and really this should never have to be said, never in my life, not once have I or Jacob or anyone that works at my company CarSauce ever been approached by a government official or anyone, whether that's in China or Australia or anywhere, and either offered me money or anyone associated with me money to make sure that we say good things about their country or their products. All of my thoughts that I ever share on this channel are my own thoughts, and they will always be my own, and this is the most political we will ever get at CarSauce. At the end of the day, I'm here to share my passion with you about cars, and I am a consumer advocate. That's why I launched CarSauce Buy, our free car buying service, because really I'm here to benefit you, the consumer. I am not here to sell cars on behalf of brands. I am not a function of their indirect marketing arm when I review one of their cars, and whenever we do sponsored content, we always cherry pick brands that we work with to ensure we remain completely unbiased. They're not going to try and influence us, and we will always tell you when that content is sponsored, unlike some of our competitors. With that out of the way, let's talk about Chinese car manufacturers. Now, I've been to China 3 times this year, and in total, CarSauce will have attended 4 different events by the end of October in China and with different brands. At this point, I would argue I am somewhat of an expert on Chinese cars and Chinese car culture in Australia, especially as we report daily on the influx of all these new Chinese car brands to Australia on our website. Just Google us, CarSauce. This week alone, my team and I have reported that Deepal is coming to Australia. We exclusively learnt and reported that Denza is coming to Australia too and launching with their D9. Denza, of course, being a BYD brand. And then you have Leapmotor, which we just released a full walk around review on, and the list honestly just goes on. And if you haven't heard of these Chinese car brands or even feel a bit overwhelmed by the amount of them entering Australia, that's fair enough. There's a lot happening right now. Frankly, the most amount of change we have ever seen in the Australian car industry. And I'll link a video I made down below explaining everything that's going on in our Aussie car industry, just below that like and subscribe button. So what the hell has even been going on with Chinese cars, specifically in the West? Well, Europe has just slapped pretty high tariffs on Chinese-built vehicles, between 17.4% to 37.6%, which is on top of a 10% duty. Why are they doing this? Well, the EU says it's because China has been, and I quote, unfairly subsidizing their cars in order to flood the European market. I've actually read the EU Commission report from front to back, and in our full written article on this on our website, just Google CarSauce China ban. Essentially, it said that the Chinese government was subsidizing Chinese electric car manufacturers in 2 key ways. 1, it was providing direct subsidies like favorable financing deals, and 2, it helped organize good deals like lower prices for raw inputs across the electric car battery supply chain. For example, lithium iron phosphate, sourcing that cheaper, which is then used in LFP batteries. And combined with the lower cost of production in China versus Europe and the rapidly growing market share in Europe for affordable Chinese cars, that was enough to spook the EU into essentially making Chinese cars cost the same as a European produced car artificially. Really, in my opinion, you could argue that these new Chinese cars were worrying EU lawmakers that local jobs and car industry could be hurt or even totally destroyed by Chinese cars. And honestly, I can understand why the EU has done it. I don't agree with it. I think it hurts the consumer, honestly, but I also kind of get it. You guys might see me as a baboon who reviews cars, but believe it or not, I actually have a commerce degree from arguably Australia's top university, the University of Melbourne, and so yes, I've certainly dabbled in economics as part of my degree. So as a bit of a rundown, tariffs are good for a few reasons. They protect domestic industries, they generate revenue for governments by taking a clip of the sale, and they encourage domestic investment and self-sufficiency. However, they can also be a warning to country or even retaliation for them imposing tariffs, and more on that later. However, in an ideal economy, assuming perfect competition, free trade, and efficiency, tariffs just shouldn't exist. It just creates artificial barriers which can do a lot more harm than good. For example, it increases costs for both consumers and businesses. If we didn't have Chinese cars right now, if you wanted to buy a brand new, fully loaded small family SUV with the latest tech, you'd be looking in at least the late 30,000s, probably $40,000 range. However, right now, you can go out and buy a Cherry Tiggo 4 Pro with heated seats, sunroof, a Euro 6 compliant, fuel efficient engine that's actually quite powerful for just $26,490 drive away. And it's a similar thing for businesses. How many bloody LDV vans do you see driving around? I see heaps. Why? Because they're cheap and cheerful. And competition keeps businesses honest. We've seen that with the likes of Skoda. They know they can't compete with Chinese cars on price. So instead they innovate with design and small, smart features like umbrellas built into the doors. Small things, but they're key differentiators. And sorry, but I'm a firm believer in a free market. If your business cannot compete with competitors, it's probably time to kick your butt into gear and start innovating. I'm a business owner. I know that. And that doesn't necessarily mean slashing prices in a race to the bottom. Chinese cars will win. But you need to offer better value and have a UVP or unique value proposition. Now you might say, well, hang on, Matt. That's not fair if China is subsidizing its car industry. But here's the part that people seem to forget, and I think it comes back to this misinformation piece. Every country in some way or another will subsidize their industries. Here's an example close to home. Do you remember Holden? In 2012, the Australian federal government gave Holden a lifeline of 215 million Australian dollars, while the states of Victoria and South Australia gave a further $60 million. So the total was $275 million, and that was supposed to have Holden manufacturing in Australia until at least 2022. Well, guess what? In 2020, Holden was completely dead and gone. And I'm not here to pick on Holden. They've done the same for Ford. I still remember my first car, a Ford Falcon Ute, built in Australia, Aussie Barra engine. It's dead. You know, they don't make them anymore. And according to a subsidy tracker, which again, I will link in that full written article on our website, General Motors, who owns the Holden brand, has received about 58 billion US dollars in subsidies and bailouts over the years from the US government. Now, I'm not saying that these are bad things. Sometimes they are necessary to save jobs and keep production onshore. But my point here is literally every country will subsidize their automotive industries in one way or another. There's proof everywhere. So then, why is America passing legislation right now to ban all Chinese vehicles in the US? Well, President Biden has already announced a 100% tariff on Chinese cars sold in the US. However, according to a Reuters report, the US government will announce shortly that Chinese produced cars will be totally banned. And not just that, but any car that contains any Chinese manufactured hardware or software. For example, LFP batteries from BYD that you would find in a Kia EV5 will be totally banned. And why that is not 100% confirmed. But according to Reuters, US government insiders say it is due to national security concerns. Now, I just can't comment on that, chiefly because I'm a commerce major and a car expert. I'm not a national security expert. But what I can say is, taking all the politics out of the equation, it's really the US and EU consumers that hurt most from this. Take a look at the BYD Shark truck. It's a plug-in hybrid with over 80 kilometers of real-world range. It drives great and is loaded with features. In fact, I was one of the first in the Western media to go out to China and actually review an Australian spec one. And of course, I'll link that down below. But suffice to say, you get so much car for just over 60,000 Australian dollars. Now, if the BYD Shark was sold in the US, I really think it would do fantastically well. And more importantly, it will put pressure on the likes of Ford, Ram, and GM to innovate and make something epic to compete, or they're just gonna risk losing sales. Which I guess brings us to the topic of this video. Should Chinese cars be banned in Australia? Well, it really just wouldn't make any sense. First of all, we don't have any car industry anymore to protect in Australia. So really, essentially there would be no justification to just slap a tariff on the cars. And we actually have an example of that in Australia at the moment. It's called the luxury car tax, where we pay an exorbitant fee on top of what you already pay for a car if it's over a certain cost. And that luxury car tax was only introduced to stop the likes of BMW and Mercedes from bringing in their 5 Series and S-Classes so we could protect the Ford Fairmont and Holden Caprice. They're gone now. So why do we have that tax? Well, it is purely revenue raising at this point. Anyway, the luxury car tax is a discussion for another day. Let me know if you want to see a video on that. And more broadly, if we just slap tariffs onto cars coming in from China, well, you can expect the same in retaliation to one of our major exports, which is just going to hurt the Australian economy for what I see as no good reason. And in my opinion, until we are presented with credible evidence that consumer Chinese cars are a national threat for Australia, which I think is probably a big call, well, I personally am certainly not going to call for a blanket ban on Chinese produced hardware and software like we're seeing in the US. And on a more deep level, with me and my team heading to China 4 times this year, so far, for different car events and actually meeting the people that are behind these brands, you know, normal people like you and I who are just trying to make cool products that work well and they're competing really hard. I think it's kind of sad that we just have this divisiveness in the world, and I wish we all just got along at the end of the goddamn day. And like I said, in a perfect economy, there are no barriers for entry, and we should simply let Darwinism do its thing and kill the underperformers. Or put the fire under them at least. And ultimately in Australia, it's consumers, the people who I advocate for, who are winning from having more affordable Chinese cars enter the market. And so personally, I am all for it. So no, I don't think that we should ban Chinese cars. And like I said, we have a written piece on this on our website. So just Google CarSauce Chinese car ban and you can read more over there. Of course, I want to know what you guys think in the comments section below. Maybe let me know what country you're from and whether or not you think Chinese cars should either be sold in your market or be unbanned from your market. And of course, if you found this video useful, please do share it with friends and family. I think it can actually help to dispel a lot of those myths that seem to be going around at the moment. And as always, my team are here to get you the best deals on your next new car. Just Google CarSauce Buy and we will connect you with thousands of dealers who we make fight each other to get you the best price possible. And best of all, it's a totally free service for you because we charge the dealers a fixed fee, which means not only can we go in the hardest to get you the best price possible, but we can source cars from anywhere in Australia. So join our many, many happy customers over at carsauce.com/buy. Thanks again for watching and ciao for now.